Welcome to Apple Teeny, where Apple news gets weird, pricey, and occasionally deeply petty. Today's Apple mood is incredible. They're using AI to debug code, blocking Siri from reading your links, and somehow the app icon situation is still a crime scene. Apple engineers are now reportedly treating large language models like a first stop for debugging, which honestly feels like the most believable AI use case on Earth. The flow is basically let the model find the bug, let the human check it, clean it up, and make sure the robot didn't confidently hallucinate nonsense into production. Apple's also running frontier models over its own codebase to surface security flaws faster, which is smart right up until you remember attackers can use the same basic idea. So yes, AI may help patch holes faster, but it also turbocharges the race to find those holes in the first place. Meanwhile, Anthropic got Claude Fable 5 back onto major cloud platforms after export controls lifted on July 1st, and the really spicy part is the safety setup. Blocked prompts can get redirected to a weaker assistant Opus 4.8, and now users are told when that downgrade happens. Critics hate this because it feels like a magician announcing the trick while still pretending the box is secure. If the weaker model can answer it anyway, what exactly are we doing here? Apple also added a rule that stops Siri AI from accessing any user-provided URLs. So if you wanted to toss Siri a link and say, "Hey, summarize this doc," that door is closed. Security-wise, sure, that's understandable. In practice, it's one more reminder that Apple's version of AI still loves saying no at the exact moment you wanted it to be helpful. And if you were sneaking onto the Siri AI waitlist on Mac with that previously reported command, that loophole is dead in the macOS 27 Golden Gate beta. Apple shut it down and re-queued the people who used it. Very on brand. Even the unofficial shortcut now has a velvet rope. The memory market is doing the full chaos package. Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron got sued over claims they coordinated to restrict DRAM supply and drive prices up, with plaintiffs saying prices jumped around 700% over 4 years. That number is wild on its own, and it lands even harder because Samsung and SK Hynix have prior convictions for DRAM price fixing. At the same time, Bloomberg says Apple is talking with 2 Chinese RAM suppliers that are on a Pentagon blacklist to secure memory for devices sold in China. If that moves forward, the political reaction is going to be instant. Apple can say supply chain reality all it wants, but blacklist optics are brutal. One of my favorite petty Apple stories this week is a magic trackpad power slider nub just falling off while the thing was turned off. That became the perfect excuse to upgrade from the old Lightning-era peripherals to the newer USB-C versions, including the all-black setup and the matching black MacBook Pro. Respect the commitment to the grandiose black life. But then there's the black keyboard, which moved control away from the lower left corner and put the globe key there, wrecking muscle memory for stuff like control-click. That is classic modern Apple. Gorgeous finish, tiny layout decision, immediate psychic damage. Leaks say the next Apple Watch Ultra might switch to a magnetic band attachment, which could unlock sensor-packed or just weirder bands, but it might also break compatibility with existing straps. New possibilities are fun. Invalidating a pile of expensive bands is less fun, especially on the Ultra, where people like to pretend they're rappelling down a cliff at any moment. On the Mac side, Xcode 27 finally adds a real menu command to delete derived data, which is hilarious because developers have been manually nuking that folder for ages like it's an ancient ritual. And macOS 26.4 now warns you when you paste a potentially malicious command into Terminal, especially if you rarely use Terminal. It even gives you a paste anyway button, which is actually the right vibe, a speed bump, not a prison. Apple's Creator Studio subscription apparently bundled productivity apps like Pages, Numbers, and Keynote in a way that forced users into updates they didn't want, and people were not amused. That sounds less like a premium bundle and more like somebody inside Apple found a resource management shortcut and hoped nobody would notice. iOS 27 will let shared albums store full-resolution photos, which sounds great until you hit the catch. It still doesn't work like a true shared library. Photos live in a separate iCloud album. Collaborators have to import them into their own libraries, and now you've got extra storage overhead because Apple gave you the nicer version of the old thing instead of the simpler version of the right thing. Also, Apple is pre-indexing devices in iOS 26.6, so Spotlight is more ready after upgrading to iOS 27, but that index still doesn't move through iCloud backups and can still take about a week to rebuild on a brand new device. So yes, indexing is getting smarter, but not smart enough to stop feeling weirdly fragile in 2026. iOS 27's resizable app framework for foldable iPhones is also a pretty big tell. Apple reportedly won't just treat the inner display like an iPad screen. iPhone apps will have to handle adaptable windows. That means developers get fresh homework, because foldables apparently require a whole new category of app behavior instead of a nice, easy stretch. And then there's app icon enforcement, also known as Squircle jail. If your icon doesn't fit Apple's rounded rectangle mask, it gets shrunk and centered in a way that can look genuinely awful. I agree with the harsh take here. This may be Apple's worst design decision. If Apple wants consistency, it should lead with better examples, not punish everyone into the same shape. The fun counterpoint is that designers like Louis Mantia and Luca Grafera are showing off a super-fast icon workflow with layered recipes for default, dark and clear themes, plus tweaks by macOS version. That part is cool because it shows modern icon design can be fast, polished and adaptable even inside Apple's rules. I just wish the rules were less joyless. A couple quick hitters. Apple's unified memory architecture still means no upgrading RAM later, because the speed and efficiency gains come from putting CPU and GPU memory together on one package. Great engineering and annoying ownership economics. Both things are true. Also, someone ran the numbers on a solid gold Mac Mini, and it would weigh about 1.17 kilograms and cost roughly $115,000 in raw materials. So if you were hoping for luxury bullion desktop computing, the answer is no, unless your idea of airflow includes armed guards. And on iPhone pricing, a $200 increase spread across a 36-month carrier plan is only about $5 and change per month, which explains why giant headline price hikes can feel weirdly invisible. Apple also can't casually tweak list prices every quarter, because carrier deals are a dense swamp of separate contracts and installment plans. Finally, in Leakland, John Prosser admitted he recorded a FaceTime call showing unreleased iOS software and says he shared future YouTube revenue with the source, while denying he directly paid for the leak. That matters because Apple's case depends on proving he induced a breach of confidentiality. Publishing leaked info is one legal question. Procuring the leak is the live wire. That's it for Appletini. Today's lesson is that Apple can make debugging easier, icons worse, and keyboards more annoying all in the same week. Thanks for listening. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.